Hello. It's a very windy afternoon in Virginia, so I don't know if the wind is going to blow my camera over or not, but I'm just waiting a few minutes because I want to talk about the new film that's coming out, Sound of Freedom, and I also want to talk about child trafficking. So, let's see. I think the wind has died down for a little while, so I think I will wait just a few more seconds and get started. This is Faith McDonald. I'm the DC representative for the American Association of Evangelicals. And we, the American Association of Evangelicals, want to do everything we can to promote this new film, Sound of Freedom. We want to encourage all of the faith communities, all of the leaders in the faith communities to stand with that film, to support it, and to encourage your people to go and see this film. And what I've learned is that it's really good if you go the very first couple of days that it opens. The first weekend when a film opens will maybe determine whether or not they get to continue on for a long time. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, wind. The wind is really nice, actually, but I don't know how disturbing it's going to be. But it's quite lovely, actually. It almost blew my basil plant over, though. So, see, this basil is growing really well, and I don't want anything to happen to it. But anyway, this is Faith McDonald, the DC Fellow for the American Association of Evangelicals, to talk today for a few minutes about Sound of Freedom and about trafficking. You know, things changed in 2000, well, a little before 2000. In 2000, the first Trafficking Victims Protection Act was passed in Congress, and I was part of the team that was helping to push that into law, and to actually get that passed in Congress. So I would say about 1998 was when things really started to change. People before then had a very different view of trafficking. But thanks to Michael Horowitz, the man who actually was the catalyst for the International Religious Freedom Act as well, in 1998, he was the one who pulled a group of us together to talk about trafficking, which is something that people just didn't even know about at that time. As I was saying, before 1998, when we started learning from people like Dr. Laura Lederer and others who were in the field of studying trafficking, there was a very different view. You know, you heard about call girls and prostitutes and hookers. You know, when I was a kid, my people had this book called The Happy Hooker. You know, it in a way it was naive. In another way, it was so offensive to women and girls who have been trafficked. Even the word child prostitute, they're not prostitutes, they're victims of, as one of my friends who was a former trafficked woman herself said, they're victims of multiple child rape. That's what they are, not child prostitutes. But before the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, people who didn't know about that were pretty naive about the whole thing, and didn't know, you know, what that was, what was the difference between a call girl? There is no difference. It's all trafficking, basically. But even when I was a kid, and my sister was at the Salvation Army in Times Square, New York, and the streets were lined with girls who I now know were being trafficked. They were not prostitutes, they were being trafficked. There was a time when there was a girl who had been coming to the Salvation Army and heard about Jesus and wanted to get out of what they called the life. It was no life. We shouldn't have even used the phrase the life. It was the death, the living death of a woman or girl who has been trafficked. But she ended up dead because her pimp would not allow her to leave the life. So she ended up dead on the street in Times Square, New York. I can remember that from the time I was probably like 11 or 12 when that happened. So that was, that was before 1998, and then thanks be to God, we started learning the truth about trafficking as we were working on the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which I said was passed into law in 2000. But we learned the truth. I got to know amazing women who had been formerly trafficked themselves and were speaking up boldly. We had the first ever, I think, national conference on trafficking in Tampa, Florida. President Bush came and spoke at it. And there were probably, I'd say, about 600 of us there. And that was before the bill was signed into law. But then it was signed into law and became the law of the land. The Office on Trafficking Victims was opened at the State Department, and a whole new way of looking at things started to take place. There were still those who wanted to talk about the difference between, this kind of exotic view of trafficking and sex workers. That's what Hillary Clinton wanted to call at least a portion of women and girls who are trafficked, sex workers. There was no sex working. This was all trafficking. Anyway, we learned so many things. We learned about the truth about trafficking. We learned, that the women should not be blamed, that the pimps and the clients are the ones who needed to be blamed. And that was the whole angle that we took on getting to the Johns and the pimps. But things have changed again. The idea of child trafficking and for horrendous purposes is now becoming known that it's the truth. It's not some crazy conspiracy. What we learned back when we worked on the Trafficking Victims Protection Act that shocked us is mild compared to the truths that are coming out now. We could have never imagined what people are learning about now with child trafficking, with child trafficking victims being then used for organ harvesting or as child sacrifices. Just unbelievable things. And I thank God for Tim Ballard, who started Operation Underground Railroad, the rescue of trafficking victims, and also Jim Caviezel, who is playing him in the new movie Sound of Freedom, and Eduardo Verástegui, who is the producer of the film, who has been just amazing in the past in so many things. In fact, he went to Sudan. I saw that Hawa, you were on here a minute ago, I don't know, but Eduardo Verástegui went to Sudan with Jason Jones, so went to Darfur and to the Nuba Mountains. So this is a guy who cares deeply about people, and of course Jim Caviezel as well. And that film should open up more eyes. People need to know the truth. People need to fight. This film is going to give people a way to fight back as well, and the new information that will be coming out even after the film. More and more exposure that's taking place through Tim Ballard and through many of his contacts. When we think about Hollywood, when we think about politicians, when we think about other very influential and wealthy people who are involved in this, when we think about what happened a few years ago that was laughed at and said that this is a crazy Pew conspiracy that now appears to have reality about Pizzagate. So all of these things are getting exposed, and I urge you to go and see Sound of Freedom. It's supposed to be opening up on July 4 at the theaters, but it's really opening up on July 3rd, many places. And the sooner you can go, and the more times you can go, I would say as well, the better. And encourage everyone you know to go and see Sound of Freedom. I am going to be encouraging, possibly putting a little Irish guilt on a lot of pastors to tell them to make sure that their people go to see Sound of Freedom. So that's it for me. It's just, you know, you could say deja vu all over again, talking about trafficking, but this is worse than deja vu all over again. This is a whole new level of evil, satanic evil, that is being exposed. So pray for Eduardo and Jim and Tim Ballard and all of those who are working with them behind the movie, in reality as well, that they would be protected from those who don't want the truth to come out. So thanks a lot, everybody, and happy Flag Day. Don't forget that this is June 14, Flag Day, and that we honor and respect our flag and those who have fought for the freedom that it represents. So, and hopefully that won't fall on the floor and then I'll be dishonoring the flag, but I don't think it will. So, God bless. Talk to you later. Bye.